Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to go through and discuss which Championship managers are going to be sacked this season, as well as discussing managers that I could see leaving and not being sacked. So let's get into this immediately. So starting off with the first manager, and it is Chris Davies. I think Chris Davies, out of all the managers going into this season, is the manager most under pressure, after I would say he underperformed with Blues, and Blues have massive expectations as a side right now under this American ownership, and they will want to be around the promotion contention this season. Do I see the Blues doing this under Chris Davies? No, I don't. I'm not convinced by Davies. He's also brought in James Beadle in goal once again. I don't think it's good enough, and for this reason, I think he will be sacked. I think it could take a couple of results early on in the season, and Chris Davies could go pretty quickly. That's one of the ones that I'm most convinced by. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Tony Mowbray returning to Blackburn. He's a manager that's managed at so many Championship sides, has Mowbray, but these days I'm not convinced Mowbray is the same manager as he once was, and he's going into a Blackburn side who I don't think are really good enough for this level right now. And what I see happening with Blackburn is I see them getting dragged into a relegation battle, I see them getting into the relegation zone, and then I think out of desperation Blackburn will sack Mowbray, even if it isn't right. So for that reason, I'm going to put Mowbray into sack. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Schumacher, who's currently at Bolton Wanderers. Now, this is quite an interesting one. I like Schumacher as a manager, and for me, I'd be looking to back Schumacher for the season. But I think there is a chance that Bolton look to sack Schumacher at some point if they are around the relegation battle, and at points this season I do expect Bolton to definitely be in a relegation battle, but I think they will back Schumacher through the season, and then I think they'll give him another season. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in to keep. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Michael Skubala, who's coming this season from Lincoln. He's coming off a brilliant season with Lincoln, is Skubala. And it'll be interesting to see how he performs with Bristol City. I think he's brought some good players. Has Skubala, players like Tolai, Dom Ballard. I think that Gibson Yard midfield is going to be a good player. So I'm happy with the additions that Bristol City have made so far. And they're still looking to bring in more players. And I think they're going to try build something with Skubala at Bristol City. I don't think they'll look to sack him quickly. And for that reason, I'm going to put him in to a keep. I think he will remain the Bristol City manager for the following season. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Nicky Hayne. I think there's a lot of questions around Nicky Hayne going into this season. And I think the main reason why people are understandably concerned about Nicky Hayne is the fact he definitely wasn't Burnley's first choice manager. More likely even fourth or fifth choice pick was Nicky Hayne. He was also appointed late, and so far Burnley have failed to really bring in any top players this summer. And I could see Nicky Hayne being under pressure early, and I think he will be sacked as Burnley manager this season, so I'm going to put him into the sack category. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Brian Barry Murphy. Now, Brian Barry Murphy's coming off a really good season with Cardiff. They played some great football, did Cardiff, and they look like a side that could definitely progress up this table this season. And I think Cardiff will get off to a really good start under Brian Barry Murphy. But for this reason, I think Brian Barry Murphy may leave as Cardiff manager at some point this season. So that's the category I'm going to put him into. I could see someone like a Burnley or potentially a Blues going in for a manager like this. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Nathan Jones. I think he did a decent job last season keeping Charlton in the league, and Charlton could be a side that's under pressure this season. They could be involved in a relegation scrap, and I'd expect they will be involved. And I guess the question is, will Charlton decide to sack Nathan Jones and bring in someone better? I don't think they will do this. I think they'll just stick by Nathan Jones. He's a sort of manager I think you want to keep you in a league. So for that reason, I'm going to put him into keep, and I don't see him getting a better job anytime soon, so I think he will remain as Charlton manager. Then I'm on to John Eustace, who is currently at Derby County. I think Derby are coming off a good season under Eustace. They nearly made the playoffs, and I think he's a very good manager for this level as Eustace. So that consistently puts you in playoff contention. And I don't see Derby sacking Eustace this season. I think Derby will have a pretty good season. But for me, the question is, will someone go in for someone like John Eustace? I think there is a chance that John Eustace does leave as Derby manager, but I think it will be at the end of the season. I think he may want to go somewhere else where he's got a better chance of promotion, or maybe he'll go to a different league. But I think he'll feel at the end of the season he may look to move on from Derby and go somewhere else. Let me know in the comments, do you agree or disagree with that? Then I'm on to the next manager, and it's not really a manager, it's two head coaches. We've got Chris Cohen and Tom Shaw at Lincoln, and most likely Lincoln are going to be involved in a relegation scrap this season. I expect them to be in the relegation zone for the majority of this season, and I do see both of these head coaches leaving the club. Potentially one may stay on, but I'm just going to put them both in to sack. And my reasoning for this is, despite Lincoln having a lack of finances and a squad ability to stay up in the Championship, I think the Lincoln board at some point will get desperate and they'll go and let's just try and get a manager in that can maybe get us on a bit of bounce in the end of the season. And I think that's why Tom Shaw and Chris Cohen will depart as Lincoln's head coaches. Then I'm on to the next manager, and is Kim Hellberg is currently at Middlesbrough. For me, I'm only looking at the top three categories. I think Hellberg will either remain as manager or he'll potentially leave, or leave at the end of the season. And for me, this depends on promotion. If Borough get promoted, I expect Hellberg will stay and do a season with Borough in the Premier League. But if Borough fail to get promoted, I reckon he could get another job in the summer, or he may potentially decide to leave midway through the season if Borough are struggling. I don't see him being sacked because I think he's a top quality manager, and I think that'd be a massive mistake by Borough to sack Kim Hellberg. I'm going to put him into keep because I think Borough will be promoted this season. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Alex Neil. And for me, I think Alex Neil's job going into the season is very safe. I don't see him going anywhere else than Millwall. And I don't see him being sacked by Millwall unless they have a really difficult season. So for this reason, Alex Neil is going into the keep. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Clement. For me, this is the exact same scenario as Kim Hellberg. I don't see him being sacked or sacked at the end of the season. It's more about, does he decide to stay or does he decide to leave, for me, with Philippe Clement. And for me, I think Clement will leave at the end of the season. I think Norwich will put a really good push in for playoffs. I think they'll get into the playoffs, but I think they'll fail to go up, and Clement will decide to go somewhere else the following season. I could see a Premier League side looking at Clement as I could with Hellberg. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is John Mousinho. Overall, I think he's done a very good job at Pompey, and there was some interest in Mousinho in the summer and some discussions that he could leave as Pompey manager. Once again, I expect Mousinho will do a good job for Pompey this season. I expect he will stay until the end of the season, but I think Mousinho will look to leave and move on from Portsmouth, as I think he'll feel he needs to go on and go somewhere better, a club where he can maybe progress up the league. Because if Pompey continue to hover around the lower parts of the table, there's no point for a manager like Mousinho staying. We want to progress in his career. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Heckingbottom, who's currently at Preston. And this is a really interesting one because Preston could be in some trouble this season, which could result in the sacking of Heckingbottom. Preston may decide at the end of the season he hasn't done a good enough job, or Heckingbottom could potentially leave because he feels that Preston isn't the club for him to progress. And I think that's where I'm leaning for a manager like Heckingbottom. I think he's better than just sort of staying around lower to mid-table. I think he's a good manager as Hickey. You want to go to a championship side where he can progress up the league. So for that reason, I'm going to put him at leave at the end of the season. I don't see him leaving earlier unless a job opportunity comes up. But I think at the end of the season, we will see Hickey depart as manager. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Julian Stephen, who's currently at QPR. Last season, I thought he did a decent job with QPR. They sort of finished around where I think most people expected. This season, I think there's a bit more pressure on Julian Stephen at QPR. They've brought in some good signings so far. Players like Dennis Serkin coming in, Tyreek Lamptey's coming on a free transfer. There's obviously questions around Lamptey in terms of staying fit. And Glenn Kamara's also coming into the QPR midfield. As well as this, there's quality up front with the likes of Richard Kone. You've got Alice Cheer. And then you've also got Ronnie Edwards, who's a really good addition in January. So I think there's pressure on QPR to have a decent push for playoffs. and now it's extended to 8 sides. I think that could be QPR's aim for this season, and I think Julian Stephen will fail to do this. I think they'll just have another mid-table finish, and for that reason, I think Stephen will be sacked at the end of the season. I don't think he'll be sacked this season unless QPR get off to a really poor start, but I think at the end of the season, they'll decide we need to move on, maybe look for a better manager, maybe look at someone like an Hickenbottom, who I'm expecting to leave at the end of the season, or a Mousinho. Then I'm on to Chris Wilder. Now, this is quite an interesting one, the discussion around Wilder. This is now his third stint at Sheffield United. Previously, I would say his stints were a success. Obviously, he was sacked before, but I think he was unjustly sacked after losing in the playoff final. And it'll be interesting to see if these Sheffield United owners regret the sacking of Chris Wilder and they're a bit more patient with him this time. I do expect them to be more patient considering they gave him a new contract in the summer, but the question is, how patient will they be with Chris Wilder? I think Wilder will at least see out the season. I think they'll accept that Sheffield United this season are going to be at best probably a mid-table side that might have a little bit of a push for playoffs but will fail to get in there. I think they'll have that understanding, especially after the loss of Gus Hamer and potentially more. But I think at the end of the season, the Sheffield United board may decide that they could move on from someone like Chris Wilder and maybe have a bit more of a long-term vision, because that's what they wanted to do a couple of years ago. And he was only really brought in to steady the ship. So for that reason, I'm going to put Chris Wilder at sack end of the season. Let me know your thoughts on that one. Do you agree or disagree? I can't see Chris Wilder leaving a club like Sheffield United, but I can see him being sacked, or I can just see him staying on. And as well as this, Wilder's proven in the past he's a manager that's better with a lower budget. So it will be interesting to see how he performs this season. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Mark Robins. I would say Mark Robins is probably equal with Chris Davies in terms of how much pressure he's on going into the season. I think he was lucky to not be sacked last season after a disappointing finish for Stoke. And after this disappointing finish, they've really backed Mark Robins this summer. They spent a lot and they brought in players like Ethan Galbraith, and I think they have high expectations to at least have a proper push for playoffs, but I think they're going to fail to do this, and I think they're going to get off to a poor start. Stoke, I think they've got some tough fixtures in their opening 8 games, and I think Mark Robins is actually going to be the first manager to be sacked this season. So for this reason, I'm putting Robins in to sack. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Matos, who's currently at Swansea. So far, I like what I'm seeing from Matos. I think he's a good manager at this level. Could you get better than someone like a Vitor Matos? Potentially, but I think he will remain as Swansea manager for another season. I really think Swansea is starting to build something, bringing players like Elijah Just this summer. That Opoku, I think, is going to be a good player for them, and there's already quality in that side. And they've actually got a replacement if Vopotnik leaves already in Ross Stewart, and I expect them to bring another striker in if he departs. I think the only question with a manager like Matos is because of Swansea's maybe higher expectations this season, he could become under pressure. Similar to why I said Julian Stephen would be sacked at QPR, but I think Matos is a better manager, and I think Swansea will have a slightly better season. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in to the keep. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Diossi at Watford. Straight away, I'm just going to put him in to the sack. The only way he doesn't get sacked at Watford is unless he gets off to a really good start. If he doesn't, the Pozzos will sack him, and I'm expecting he's going to struggle early on, and I think he will be his manager that gets sacked quite early. I actually think Watford fans have been quite happy with what they've seen from him so far, but I just don't think he's going to get that time that he needs to sort of implement his style of football. And as well as this, Watford have lost some key players this summer with the likes of Aaron Kunda, Loser, could still depart, so I think he's going to struggle this season at Watford. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is James Morrison. Now, this is quite an interesting one, because James Morrison did a brilliant job last season coming in as interim manager, but it is completely different being the full-time manager. It's starting off with high expectations. West Brom's expectations this season isn't to be sort of a relegation battling side that stay up in 21st place, where his expectations as manager is to at least finish a mid-table for me with this West Brom side and potentially push further on. But I do think West Brom will be patient with a manager like Morrison. They'll understand it is his first proper job. And I think the Baggies fans will give Morrison time. As well as this, he's a former player that was well liked. So I think he will get time as manager. And I don't see West Brom really struggling this season. I think they'll be a decent side. So I think there'll be enough to keep him. And I think he'll get another season at the Baggies. Then I'm on to the next manager, and it's Nuno at West Ham. Now, I could see him going into any of these categories. I think any of them are possible. I think I could see him staying and West Ham getting promoted. I could see him struggling potentially, and he could be sacked. They could get off to a poor start, and he could be sacked early. And I could also see Nuno leaving early or at the end of the season. And for me, where I'm going to put Nuno is leave. I think he will get a Premier League job this season, will Nuno. I think a Premier League side will take a gamble on Nuno and just say it just didn't work out for him at West Ham, but he's previously done a really good job at Forest. He did well at Wolves, so I think a lower to mid-table Premier League side will take a gamble on Nuno. The one I see is Fulham, and I think he will join mid-season and he will leave West Ham. Let me know in the comments, do you agree or disagree with this? Do you see Nuno staying as manager? Do you see him being sacked? Or do you see him even walking? Then I'm on to the next manager, and it is Cesar Pixito, who's currently at Wolves. Now, Pixito may struggle at Wolves. There's high expectations for the side, but I think he will start well at Wolves. I've been impressed from what I've seen from him so far, and I think he will remain as manager, and Wolves will be promoted by the end of the season. Then I'm on to Phil Parkinson. Now, you could justify potentially sacking Phil Parkinson at the end of the season if Wrexham fail to get into the top 8 and fail to really have a proper push for promotion. But based off what the owners have said at Wrexham, it's hard to see Parkinson being sacked at all. And for that reason, I'm going to put him into keep. They want to keep Parkinson for as long as possible, so that's why he's in that category. I would consider maybe at the end of the season sacking Phil Parkinson and maybe bringing in a top manager for this level, because I think Parkinson's decent and he's a steady manager, but I'm not sure if he's the manager to get you promoted to the Premier League. I think he'll need a lot of quality to make it happen. I think another manager could get Wrexham promoted quicker. And finally, I've got Tom de Ruyter at Southampton, and there's so many questions around Tom de Ruyter. The first question is, will he actually be allowed to be Southampton manager this season? Because there is a chance he could be banned by the FA. I would guess he'll probably remain as manager, and he'll probably just get a fine. So I'm going to rule that out straight away. The next question is, was Tom de Ruyter a good manager last season for Southampton, or was he just benefiting from spying? There's no doubt I think the spying helped him at points, but I think he did prove that he is a good manager as Tom de Ruyter. And then the other question is, how will Tom de Ruyter perform as manager if he remains at Southampton? I think he will do pretty well. I think Southampton are in for a pretty good season despite that points deduction, and I think he will remain as Southampton manager until the end of the season, and he will stay at Southampton for another season. I can't see Tom de Ruyter looking to leave, as I think he'll want to remain loyal to Southampton after what happened. And I see him performing at a good level this season, so I don't think he will be sacked. So that is the end of this video. Please let me know your thoughts on it. Where do you agree and where do you disagree? What managers do you be seeing sacked? What managers do you see leaving? And what managers do you think will remain in their job until the following season? And if you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you subscribe to the channel as well as liking the video.